Elon Musk picked a fight with George Soros and made an interesting comment about Soros. He called him Magneto, the comic book supervillain. I'm definitely going to talk more about that to Brianna's utter delight in just a second. But why is he fighting with Soros? Well, maybe because Soros, apparently, according to the Washington Post, has sold off all its Tesla shares. So it could be that this is retribution. Musk tweeted a whole bunch of anti-Soros things in recent days. So, but then people, so this is very interesting, because Magneto is specifically a Jewish supervillain. Magneto's backstory is that he's a Holocaust survivor. So Magneto's from the X-Men. He's a villain in the X-Men comic books. He's in all the X-Men movies. He's played by Sir Ian McKellen as an older man, and actually by Michael Fassbender in the prequel ones.
Great job. Love me some
both
Fassbender.
Are fantastic.
Yep.
He's a really compelling character because his background as a Holocaust survivor actually is what motivates him. Almost in like he's often compared to like a Malcolm X. Like he's the extremist. He wants to create a separate world for his people, for mutants, because humans will never understand them and will always try to put them down. And he has this friendship with there it is on screen. That's the character he has this helmet, and his power is to manipulate magnetic fields, so he can move metal. In one movie, he moves like the entire Golden Gate Bridge. It's kind of ridiculous.
No, I remember. It was great.
It was great. But people are saying that Musk basically did an anti-Semitism.
Right.
Which,
so let's
that's a little preposterous.
Let's read the whole shebang.
Okay.
So Elon
shebang
says,
us away.
So Soros reminds me of Magneto. Then one of the Krasenstein brothers, Brian Krasenstein, follows up saying, fun fact, Magneto's experiences during the Holocaust as a survivor shaped his perspective as well as his depth and empathy. Soros, also a Holocaust survivor, gets attacked nonstop for his good intentions, which some Americans think are bad merely because they disagree with his political affiliations. To which Elon responds, you assume they are good intentions. They are not. He wants to erode the very fabric of civilization. Soros hates humanity.
Maybe he just hates Tesla, but
So again, there's this Elon retribution angle where he's just mad at Soros for selling off all his stock. People, I agree, it's not a direct reading, right? But even folks who are more conservative aligned, some Radley Balco, who formerly of Reason Magazine, tweeted that, look, I've worked for 2 Koch-funded groups and no Soros-funded groups, and that this tweet is seriously effed up. Musk is tossing slabs of red meat to the most deranged, dangerous factions of the right, and it's looking less like opportunism and more like he's just one of them. People have put this in concert with other changes on the site, a lack of moderation that has allowed certain kind of hate group speak to proliferate, and maybe you think that's fine.
Allegedly. I don't know how borne out that is, but...
All right.
Okay.
And combined with some of his other tweeting patterns, who he responds to, the kind of tweets he's been liking, he tweeted out some memes about black-on-black crime and certain other kind of tropes that were factually inaccurate. There's like this edited graph.
Are they factually inaccurate?
Yeah, because I think it's 85% of crime of black crime is against black people, 83% of white crime is against white people, and then there's the outliers that are very much lower. And there's a graph that cuts off those huge chunks of same on same crime to make it seem as though the most prevalent kind of crime is black on white crime, and that kind of crime is underreported.
My understanding is the graph is only about crimes committed by one racial group against another.
No, there's an edited graph that people have been sharing around, and so that's what people are saying is misleading. Like, you can say that that's fine, but that's, it's an edited graph. So that combined with a number of other memes make people feel like Elon Musk is like fully red-pilled, even folks that aren't especially liberal-leaning. You disagree?
Well, I think he is very red-pilled, but I don't think this is evidence of anti-Semitism. So, of course, this is all throughout the Washington Post article. They're quoting the Anti-Defamation League, saying that this is... they're condemning this as playing into anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Again, I don't see what... Look, you can... you're not a crazy conspiracy theorist or an anti-Semitic or a hateful person if you disagree. You can disagree with George Soros' policies. I probably agree with some of them and disagree with others. And he has massive influence. He spends tons of money helping to elect people who support his policies. I think that's his right to... You might actually disagree. I think that's totally fine within the realm of how campaigns are conducted, but you can complain about it doesn't make you an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist to think his influence is bad or not not want him to have this level of influence or think that the policies that he's trying to achieve are not good. Certainly some people who criticize him going too far, and we've seen the anti-Semitic memes, that kind of stuff. There's an element of that, but substantially the criticism of him is a criticism of the priorities he has. And I'm not even saying I share that criticism, but and then additionally, with this tweet specifically, just because this character has a Jewish origin doesn't mean comparing. I mean, George Soros also, right, has a Holocaust origin.
He survived the Holocaust.
Yeah.
I mean,
so making that parallel it's like a biographical.
Well, it was Brian
similarity.
Krasenstein that makes the parallel. The question isn't making the parallel. It's that, maybe it's an issue of taste, but a lot of people would say that if you bring up that someone as a Holocaust survivor might have an interest in certain social justice activities, even if you disagree with them, a lot of people, given the magnitude of that horror, would tread a little bit more lightly and show some deference and respect to what it was that they survived and not double down on, no, he's evil. And I think that is what people are responding to in combination with the broader universe of how Elon Musk has been tweeting of late. So, for example, he's been responding a lot to this End Wokeness account that was tweeting this, he tweeting about how, why don't we know more? Why does it seem that we know so much about the shooters when they are shooters who are kind of right-leaning, but not anything about certain other shooters, like the trans shooters that may or may not be left-leaning, right? Like we don't know very much about that person.
Well, haven't we ourselves asked that very question?
Sure, but the last part of the tweet is that that he's responding to is Hispanic male shoots at mall and kills several white people one day later. White supremacy. Well, that's not exactly conjecture, nor did it take a rocket scientist to come to the conclusion that guy was a white supremacist, given that he had enormous swastika tattoos all over his body. So what is the implication of Elon Musk responding to that tweet? Odd. Is it odd that the news would report that a man with swastika tattoos shot a bunch of people and that swastika tattoos are literally the sign of Nazism and white supremacy?
Yeah, I mean... Look, there's often I agree with what you just said. There's often a kernel, or more than a kernel, of a good idea or an intriguing idea or something that bears further investigation in some of these observations, like the media's greater interest in some of the mass shooters and seeming lack of interest in the one that might have gone counter to their usual playing favorites teams kind of thing. Is interesting, and we are a little more curious about that. And then you can take that too far and start to go into conspiracy territory. And that's, I wish Elon would hold himself back a little bit, I guess. But, he's his own person. He's bought Twitter. He can make it his playground. Yeah. He has put now somebody else in charge of, on paper at least, CEO of Twitter. I'm calling her Shilon, but that doesn't seem to have caught on yet.
Keep trying, make that happen.
Some right-wing people were a little upset about her because comes from the World Economic Forum.
Right.
And from, was it NBC News?
I don't remember that part of it.
I think it was NBC. She had a mainstream news background. So I think some people on the right are worried that, the mainstream... the Hydra's got its tentacles into...
Yeah, he's all over the place, to be honest, right now. It's not clear that he's doing things that are advantageous for him financially. I don't think that he's making decisions that are going to want to make advertisers come back to the site. It's not clear how the Tucker Carlson Twitter deal will actually affect the long-term financial viability of Twitter, which is struggling right now. Advertisers have concerns. It's not, I think, a left-right issue. I've said this a million times before. It's money. And most advertisers don't want their post next to anything that is promoting Nazism or white supremacy or whatever, even if you think from a free speech perspective that should be allowed in the public discourse. And as a businessman, Elon Musk has to make certain kind of decisions. People selling off his stock, Tesla stock plummeting the way that it has done since he bought Twitter. These are consequences of decisions that he's making that he's going to have to live with. And just to point out, there another one of the tweets that people are pointing to saying that he's going down a rabbit hole. Chernovich tweeted some stuff, and well, let me not do that one. So he tweeted, for example, in response to the protesters following the Neely death on the subway. There were a bunch of people occupying the subway tracks that were protesting for Penny to be charged. He had not been charged at that time. And Elon Musk asked this refrain that many conservatives have been asking: why didn't they protest the children who were murdered at the Christian school? They are disingenuous. And so again, there's this framing of, somehow they're out to get Christianity. I mean, how many black churches were gunned down by white supremacists, how many synagogues have been gunned down by white supremacists. Sikhs have been attacked by white supremacists. And there are protests when the perpetrator is not killed on the scene and is not arrested, or is arrested but treated very well. The way that, what was it, Dylan Roof, who was taken to Burger King and escorted so gently, it seemed, to the car. Protests are about people feeling like they need to protest the justice system not working appropriately. Not just randomly someone got killed, so we have to protest. You have to protest something. And so there was this way that people who continue to try to act as though there's this victim mentality where we don't care about the death, the murder of all of those kids at that Christian school. It was horrible. But without evidence of it, there's all this dog whistling that says, oh, they're out to get white Christians. They're out to get us. Then they only care when they die and not when we die, which I don't think is an accurate representation of what's going on, and which I do agree with your former colleague from Reason is throwing red meat to people, regardless of what Elon is intending. It is feeding a movement that is undeniably, based on FBI reports, is growing.
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think the media specifically, like how much attention we give, right? Like, yes, the Jordan Neely, regardless of how you feel about it. The choice to make this as big a story from a media perspective involves some decision making from media actors, sure, where, you know, how many, crime stories have we covered in the last month or so where more people die or it's random, it's horrifying, kids gunned down. Some of those big national news got a lot of coverage. A lot of them didn't get nearly as much coverage as this. And without trying to impute any conspiracy or I'm not trying to make anyone paranoid about the decision making that goes into that, but the uneven nature of that can cause you to question, well, why? Yeah. And is it because it speaks to something like what happened to Jordan Neely speaks to the political or the policy views of the people making decisions in media?
I think some of that is true. I also think, frankly, there are so many, most gun crimes happen like in urban areas, gang violence and things like that don't get very, very widely reported on. And there's an implication that, well, no one cares about black on black crime. We're only reporting on interracial crime because it's galvanizing and it confirms one narrative or the other.
Right.
I do think there's some of that, but I think a lot of it is that we report on crime that makes us feel implicated as more affluent people who are not in the middle of gang violence. Like, it's a kind of out of sight, out of mind mentality. And what was so, I think, provocative about the Jordan Neely story is how many people, especially writers in New York, who are writing and making, comprising the press, feel like that could have been me. I've been on the train. I've seen panhandlers. I've seen violent interactions on a train. Right. People can put themselves in those shoes. The attacks with the homeless in San Francisco, it's all about, well, I could be vulnerable. My class doesn't protect me from these kind of attacks and this kind of violence. That's why those stories get covered. And
that's media choice and media bias both ways. Right. I talk about this when I think this is one of the most pernicious things media coverage does in general is give people false impressions about what the relative dangers or harms are. I mean, most people who die by a gun shot themselves.
Correct.
They died by suicide. Yeah. But that doesn't generate the level of coverage, and then it's a lot of one-off gun homicides that are crime-related, sometimes domestic disputes, workplace disputes, fights with neighbors. The hateful person guns down people is not very common. Yeah. It happens, and how do you cover it in a way that doesn't make people think that intuitively that, this could happen to me, this could happen to my kids. Yeah. Even that, like, there has been an increase in subway crimes, but we're talking about from a small number to a larger number, but still a small number relative to the overall crime, even the overall crime being perpetrated in New York or anywhere else.
I mean, look, I think that's right. And I would also just say that I could sit here and say, well, why haven't we heard more about the white guy that shot up all his coworkers at the bank a month ago? Remember that one? Oh my gosh, it's a conspiracy not to talk about white on white crime. I mean, I think there were diverse people that he killed. But why are we talking about that white guy?
And I can respond, what about the graduation party where a bunch of black kids got killed by
that was
black
people?
But
so we can sit here, but Elon Musk playing that game. I think there are times when there is media bias and there is an interest in a story because it promotes one narrative or another. But I think we should just be careful about looking to other factors, specifically the protests point that a lot of conservatives have been making. Before you make that point, before you make that argument, check and see what they're actually protesting. If they're actually protesting someone not being arrested or not being charged with a crime, that's legitimate. And that's not something that has to do with like the racial profile of the scenario.
The best thing you can do here to like not convince yourself that, oh, they're only covering this or they're never covering what, is to follow news sources that reflect all sorts of different perspectives. Yeah. So if you're paying attention to what CNN is saying, you're also keeping tabs on what Fox is saying. You're following accounts on, if Twitter is your main place you're getting news, you should be following accounts on all sorts of sides, not just listening to Cat Turd.
Yeah, end wokeness. At End Wokeness.
End Wokeness, and then listen to, I don't know, find some super woke account. Find out who's the lady that hosts the dinners where she makes white people feel like racist. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Sarah Rao.
Okay, all right. We're rising for you right after this.